question. I'm gonna lean my entire eternity and life on it. So it's gonna have to have way more evidence for it than the normal kind of evidence. This is something that's absolute. So I need something that's really absolutely assured and reliable. So here's the thing. Here's the problem with that. So they set the bar. I show them all, you show them all this evidence and stuff, which we're going to go into. And they set the bar, and they set the bar at an absolute scale, so they can say, well, I guess there's some other possibility here, right? So maybe it was an alien that came and fooled everybody and did all this. And it's like, well, so what's the evidence for that? Well, I don't see anybody. It's possible, right? So they have some bar that's absolute high. The problem with that is there's three types of claims in the world, and the analytic philosophers would talk about this, and one is called absolute. So these are things like, another term for it, you don't need to know this, but apodectic. You can look it up on the internet. I might have misspelled it. It might be an I instead of an E. But basically, these are kind of things like, these are definitional. This is like logic. If something can't be true in the same circumstance, in the same place, and same thing at the same time, and untrue. It can't be true and untrue at the same place and the same time. That's like an impossibility, by definition. Another thing would be math. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. Well, if you define what 1 is, and you define what plus is, and you define what equals is, and you define what 2 is, it's by definition true. So these are things that are absolutely true. But then there's a second type of statement, which is, I'm going to call it factual. Okay? So that's a question about something in the real world. So this would be like a 1 plus 1, 1 ball plus 1 ball equals 2 balls. Okay, that's true. But a factual question would be, there are 2 leprechauns in the parking lot right now. That's a factual question. That's something about the actual world, the real world. So how would you determine if there are 2 leprechauns in the parking lot or not? Let's see, John's sitting next to the window. He could lean back, look out the window, and check it out. No, there's no leprechauns in the parking lot. That claim is false, right? Or there's like 50 cars in the parking lot. Well, you can go and check that out. But that's all based on, a factual question is something about the real world, and it all rests on basically observation, human sensory information, observation, and our own, reasoning about that. And all of these things, because we're human beings, we're not 100% perfect. Maybe one person sees it a little differently than another person, or sometimes we get things wrong. Look, to err is human, but to be human isn't always to err. We get a lot of things right. We get some things wrong, but we get a lot of things right. And so this factual area, this is where the questions of did Jesus rise from the dead? Did these disciples really live? Did they really see him? Did they really write it down? Those are all factual questions. So this is not really to take it into, well, you can't demonstrate it to me absolutely, so I'm not going to believe it. It's not really legitimate if you're talking about anything that's actually in the real world. What this is, so the approach that we're going to take is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's true beyond a reasonable, well, I won't write it down, beyond a reasonable doubt. The same kind of technique that we use in a courtroom to take away somebody's liberty or their life or their property, we're going to use this kind of standard. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And Christianity and the truth of Christianity is actually beyond any reasonable doubt. But it's not absolute. It's not definitionally true. It is based on things that people observed and happen in the real world. And God doesn't, He shows us things that we can actually observe. And that's true of anything that's actually true in the real world. Now the third category is nonsensical, and I won't talk much more about that. But these are things that basically are not even disprovable. So you can't prove it. This physicist Wolfgang Pauling wrote in the margins of a colleague's paper, and he said, what you're talking about, this physics that you're talking about, this proposal, it's not true. It's not even false. It's a speculation that you can't even test. So, for example, if I say, oh, there's a toasted cheese deity, and he's on a planet, and it's just so far away from our Earth that you can't see it by a telescope. And you say, well, okay, I guess that is testable because it's in the real world. Well, we built a bigger telescope. Now we got the Hubble telescope. Let's look out there and see. Well, you can't see him because guess what? Every time you build a bigger telescope, he moves further out there, just beyond the reach of the biggest telescope. And whenever you try to see him, he moves even further and further out. So you can never actually see him. So that would be in this category of really nonsensical. It's not really even worth observing or discussion because you can't prove it, you can't disprove it. So those are the three types of arguments, and I say, look, this is what we're looking at. Is it true beyond a reasonable doubt? And that is what we're going to do. So with that, we're going to start with, and you can tell me, by the way, if I'm going like into too much detail, you know, or not enough detail. You can ask questions about it. So here's what we do. If the method we're going to use works everywhere else, it's going to work for religion. If it works for the legal system, if it works for science, if it works everywhere else, it's going to work for religion. If it doesn't work anywhere else, nobody's using this method anywhere else and finding that it actually leads to truth and works, then it's not going to work for religion. So saying, oh, gee, I wonder how I feel about this. I really feel this way about this thing. I just have this feeling that is correct. If it doesn't work anywhere else, like, oh, I have a feeling that objects actually will repel from the earth. I really have this sincere feeling. It's not going to work anywhere else. It's not going to work for religion. Like, hey, let's find out, is the Bible, is it actually accurate? Did Jesus really say this or that? There's a Jesus seminar that they did years ago where they got a bunch of scholars together and they put up words that Jesus said in the Bible and they would vote on it. You know, how many vote, you know, green if I think it's really said by Jesus, orange if it's like, or yellow if it's like maybe, and red if not. I don't think Jesus said it. What is that a valid method? Apparently for religion and for Jesus and for the Bible, we can apply that. But would you ever do that for anything else? Would you say, well, you know, I don't know if Abraham Lincoln really said those words in the Gettysburg Address. Let's take a vote. Oh, I think he said these words. I don't think so. Is that really a way to arrive at truth? It doesn't work anywhere else, so it's not going to work for religion. So I say with people, I start with the common ground. I say, let's just start with whatever we use for everything else. So that's the approach we're going to take all across the board as we go through this class. So we're going to talk about the New Testament documents. So, question is, look, they're written a long time ago. You ever heard these objections? Well, it's 2,000 years ago. It's, how could we possibly know? Because all this happened 2,000 years ago, and I don't see my TV working.
It was there a few minutes ago.
It was?
The computer went on power shut-off mode.
Computer is on. TV is off. So,
She probably just has to turn TV on.
anybody want to help me? If it doesn't, I'll just...
Oh, it's right there.
Oh, good.
Here, Perry, why don't you give me the remote too?
What's that?
Why don't you give me the remote so that you don't have
thanks.
to do both of them?
So, oh my goodness, now what? Okay. Now what?
Computer.
Yep.
There, you're good.
You got it.
It's up.
No,
Is
he's
that the
looking
wrong
for it.
one? I'm sorry, this is the wrong one.
Oops.
All right, I know I kind of go pretty fast, so give you guys a breather anyway for a few minutes. Anybody got any questions while I'm doing this?
With that absolute, you had math, and then what was the other things that are examples of like absolute?
Logic.
Logic, that's it, thank you.
So let's see. Okay. Sorry about this. Technical. So there, I'm just reviewing for you what we're going to do this week. Next week, probably the Bible and science, and then questions and other. So here we go. Okay. So, start with standard historical methods. This is what we're going to do. We're going to find that the New Testament documents are reliable. Now, I'm going to focus on the New Testament just because of the time, and also because those are really the most important. And remember, the fastest way to get to salvation. We want to focus on the New Testament, talking about Jesus. That's the fastest way there.